It's working.
Yeah. Is it working? All right, here we go. Oh, cool. Honestly, this has been a really fun conversation to listen in on. I've been really interested in civic work personally, so being able to have this opportunity has been just absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate just the diversity of voices and how I think this is like just the epitome of democracy, right? People with ideals representing different groups of people coming together. And at some point, it's true, we may not agree, but the point is to come together for a shared unity. So this is the session where I recognize you guys are talking more about what do you need to function as an effective team. And Allison, of course, feel free to also work through this with me. And so I realized that this conversation was about finding out the what and the why to operationalize and seeing how we can build the culture to make a team work, because the culture triumphs the how, as you guys have been saying. The idea of moving forward together and ultimately representing what these policies would mean for the community that you guys are representing. And we recognize that change has a ripple effect. So that's why there is a process and a checks and balances to this system. So essentially, we're looking at the clarity, alignment, and unity for the group so that the team can deliver on what you as constituents, as representatives, ultimately want to see for your constituents. I really appreciated the input that you guys all have, again, this diversity of voices, where in terms of functioning together, I love the term like information symmetry amongst the council. And even though you guys have the same information in the packets, there might be separate conversations that would lead to separate knowledge gained. And so figuring out a way to make sure everyone's on the same page for easier decision making. And the idea of, instead of finding exceptions, just go ahead and get to the root of the problem and fix the rule. The idea, again, of like figuring out the right information that you all can have together and share, and Allison and her team talking about how that could be something, a process that you guys can figure out and make that tangible. And then the conversation shifted into the values that this entity, this team wants to embody. I heard the word stewardship, of being stewards to the city and for the constituents, the representation, the responsibility of representation and linking services to constituents, advocacy and consistency. And I really love this sort of dialogue that was happening about setting up for your values. And it seems like an interesting challenge that you guys face is looking at the past and seeing what the city has done in the past and looking at that trajectory and honoring what decisions were made in the past, but also looking towards the future. And perhaps those decisions that were grounded in past work may need to be open to change. And it seems like this is going to be a very interesting perspective that you all will come towards, but ultimately it's this really nice sentiment that there will be healthy disagreements grounded in respect. And moving forward from that is how you guys as a team will learn and grow. But ultimately that, I think, is the beauty of democracy, is the idea of healthy disagreements and working together while representing all these different voices. And speaking of voices, I love the quote of, "Don't forget the smallest voices." And community engagement became like a really rich conversation that has a lot of facets, right? The idea of perhaps having longer open mics for constituents to voice their opinions, going directly to the community to get these voices, and knowing that you ultimately will represent the voices of many, many people. There's another plurality, I think another interesting tension to work on in the future that is, one is how do we get the community engagement that we're looking for, but also how do we balance that with the fact that decisions do need to be made and you will never get the fullest picture, but ultimately people are relying on you to make decisions that would better their lives. So finding the balance between being a leader, but also listening to those who you represent. And the voices of the traditionally marginalized became another interesting point of conversation. Like, how do we get voices of people who perhaps aren't always connected on social media? How do we tap into the existing networks in the city to be able to get the perspectives of constituents that, again, might be harder to reach. I like the idea that nothing in your role is prescribing you on how you connect with your ward. And so each of you may come up with something that fits best with your personality as well as your the constituency in your ward. And ultimately that question how to engage is again you can rely on the operationalizing of the team. I realize the sentiment that priorities are where your money, where your checkbook is, and if you want to reach the vulnerable, make that priority with financial. And that's how you make things ultimately realer. Other points of topic is that understanding that the constituents should know the difference between the city's role and the county's role. I think that makes a lot of sense, that oftentimes it is hard. It feels like government is opaque and you don't quite know who is in charge of who. It's a larger system. But having people recognize what your responsibilities are, they can then turn to you for the right things. And you essentially get the credit of the decisions that are within your capacity. Which I think is very important for leaders, that their constituents understand the domain that you guys are working with. I like this other point that language is important. Instead of affordable housing, affordable living might be a better way to describe your aspirations. And language does encapsulate what you want the future to be, and that a language of equity should be well thought out and used even amongst this team. I really like the more tangible aspects of this session as well. Things like, one, if we want to have unity amongst this team, can we have an inventory of our council members' priorities? So again, you guys know where you're on the same page with things and you can just easily move forward with those. And for things that are different in priorities, those could be room for longer dialogue. Another simple point is having transparency. Just have your cameras on during meetings so we know how you guys are all reacting in these conversations with each other. And we recognize that many of us you guys want time to do research. Ultimately, sometimes there's a million things to research and it's hard to get through everything. But having all this time to just take a breather, reflect, would be very helpful for decision making. Which gets us also to length of meetings and relating to mental wellness. Having a timely meeting that is focused and more specific could help this group move forward in achieving unity. But also keep in mind space to process. At some point, a meeting might go on for too long, and maybe the best thing is to just step back, reflect, and come back with a new fresh pair of eyes. And finally, having a heads up, like just common courtesy for these team members to not be surprised at a board table. And not only is it common courtesy, it could also help you guys raise a point if you converse with the idea around to flesh it out and see what your team members think before having a conversation to agree or disagree on it. The other aspect is different meeting times. And this would be great for, as you see, your constituents don't all have 9-to-5 jobs, but you want them to be engaged. So how can we be creative about really engaging those diverse members of our community? The last thing I think this conversation has really captured is being able to honor the unique experiences of all the team members in this conversation. And everyone's values really comes from somewhere. So even though you may disagree on policies, which again, I think is a healthy part of democracy, but as you may disagree, people are saying, I don't want to take things personally, right? It's just part of the process. And being able to understand where each person's unique experiences come from can really help build the kind of compassion needed to make this team into something really fantastic for the city.
I think you did a great job of encapsulating quite a lot.
Wow.
Glad that we had you here.
Well, thanks for having me here. This was, again, great to see.